Chapter 5. Sleep. 2 weeks later. James got up at 5:30 a.m, despite his whole body begging him to stay under the duvet. He put on his running kit and headed to the athletics track as the sun rose over campus. It took him an hour to run 25 laps, a distance of 10 kilometres. He showered, then traded some homework with Shaquille over breakfast. Lessons went from 8:30 until 2 o'clock, with half an hour for lunch. After lessons, there was karate practice, topped off with 45 minutes of circuit training. Boiling hot, James downed half a litre of orange juice and collected one of the ride-on mowers from the gardener's storeroom. It wasn't hard driving the mower, but the sun was on him the whole time, and the grass pollen made his eyes itch. It was 6:15 p.m. by the time James got his first chance to relax. Dinner was a social event, with everyone mucking about and catching up on gossip. Most cherubs had done their homework before dinner and had the evening to themselves, but the mowing meant James hadn't even gotten started. Homework was supposed to be 2 hours a day. Some teachers were decent, others piled on so much work it took heaps longer. When James got back to his room, it was gone 7 o'clock. He sat at his desk, spread out his textbooks, and opened his homework diary. In the 2 weeks he'd been back on campus, James had acquired a backlog of homework that sucked up every second of his free time. It was a warm evening, so James left his window open. A breeze clattered into the plastic slats of his blind. James's eyes were gluey, and the words in his textbook drifted out of shape. His head slumped on the desk, and he dozed off before he'd written a word. Kyle lived across the hall. He was nearly 15, but he wasn't much bigger than James. "Wakey, wakey," Kyle said, flicking James's ear. James's head shot up from his desk. He opened his eyes, inhaled deeply, and looked at his watch. It was gone 10 o'clock. "Oh, crap," James said, startled. "If I don't get this history report done by tomorrow, I'm dead meat. It's a 2,000-word essay, and I haven't even read the chapters in the textbook." "Well, get a deferral," Kyle said. "I've had a deferral, Kyle, and I've had a deferral of the deferral. I've got extra laps to run before school and mowing after. There aren't enough hours in the day. I spent all Sunday doing homework and I still keep getting further behind." "You should speak to your handler." "I tried," James said. "You know what Meryl said?" "What?" "She said, if I was so snowed under with work, how come I had time to spend sitting in her office whinging?" Kyle laughed. "I swear they're trying to kill me," James moaned. "No," Kyle said. "They're trying to instill a sense of discipline in you. After a month of being worked like a dog, maybe you'll think twice about ignoring the rules next time. It's your own stupid fault. All you had to do on holiday was keep in half reasonable shape and study the briefing for the hostage training. Everybody warned you. Me, Kerry, Meryl, Amy. But you always reckon you know better." James angrily swept his arm across his desk, shooting his books and pens onto the floor. "Yeah, good idea," Kyle grinned. "That'll solve your problems." "Spare me another lecture," James shouted. "I'm so knackered I can hardly keep my eyes open, and I'm sick of everyone saying I told you so." "What's that report you're doing?" Kyle asked. 2,000 words on the foundation of the British intelligence service and its role in the First World War. "Interesting stuff," Kyle said. "I'd rather eat a bowl of snot," James said. "I might just be able to help you out, kiddo. I did that course 2 years ago. I've got my old notes and an essay in my room." "Oh, cheers, Kyle," James grinned. "You're a lifesaver." "10 quid, Kyle said. "What?" James gasped. "Some friend you are, trying to make money out of me when I'm at my lowest ebb." "This essay is a beauty, James. Grade A material. The girl I nicked it off is now studying history at Harvard University in the States." "Fiver," James said. He reckoned the essay was easily worth a fiver. He'd have to swap bits around and rewrite in his own handwriting, but that would take about an hour, whereas doing the essay from scratch was a whole night's work. "Oh, you're bleeding me dry," Kyle said, twisting his mouth as if he couldn't make up his mind. "But I'm a little low on funds. You can have it for a fiver, if you give us the money right now." James went to his desk and got a fiver out of his cash box. Kyle stuffed it in his pocket. This better be a good essay, James said. Anyway, Kyle said, I didn't come here to help you with your homework. I'm the senior agent on a big mission that's coming up. We need 3 other kids. Me and you at Asker discussed it, and you're on the team if you want the gig. James wasn't that enthusiastic. I don't want to work with Hewitt as my mission controller again. He's a psychopath. Hewitt raves about you, Kyle said. He thinks you did a great job on that anti-terrorist mission. Plus, this is a big team. Hewitt's wife will be there as well. She keeps him under her thumb. Well, who else is going? James asked. Well, me, of course, Kyle said. And Kerry. She's walking with a stick, but they reckon she'll be healed up before blast-off. There's a vacancy for another girl. It was going to be Gabrielle, but she's being held back for something in South Africa. Nicole Edison, James said. Who? Kyle asked. You know her, James said. She was on my basic training and quit after 1 day. She got her grey shirt at the 2nd attempt. I think she's done a couple of missions, but nothing major. I think I know who you mean, Kyle said. Is it that girl with the huge chest you're always going on about? She is so stacked. James grinned. James, Kyle said indignantly. You can't pick a girl for a mission because she has big breasts. Why not? Well, for starters, it's unbelievably sexist. Oh, come on, Kyle. Nicole's a really good laugh. She's in my Russian class and she's always getting chucked out for messing around. And as long as Kerry doesn't find out and kick my butt, who cares if it's sexist or not? I'll ask Hewitt to put her name on the list of candidates, Kyle said, reluctantly. But he'll only pick her based on merit. The first mission briefing is tomorrow. There's tons of background studying to do. Oh, great, James said. When am I going to get time to do that? Oh, didn't I mention? Kyle said innocently. It's been arranged with Merrill. You still have to do morning laps, but we've cut out some of your lessons and Mac has agreed to knock the mowing on the head. Oh, cool, James grinned. Another 2 weeks of that workload was going to send me under. What lessons have I been dropped from? Art, Russian, religion, and history, Kyle said. Superb, James said, deliriously drumming his hands on his desktop. Then the penny dropped. Did you say history? Uh-huh, Kyle nodded. I just paid you £5 for a history essay. Yeah, good price for a good essay. James leapt furiously out of his chair. I don't care if it's written on gold parchment by that bloke who does the history shows on Channel 4, he spluttered. I don't need the essay if I don't have to go back to history class. Well, it goes to prove the old saying, Kyle giggled. What saying? Cheats never prosper. I'll tell you who will never prosper, James stormed, grabbing one of the pens off his carpet. You. And you know why? Because you're going to have an extremely hard time prospering after I've rammed this biro up your nose. Give us my $5 back. What $5? Kyle asked. I don't recall any $5. Did you get a receipt? James gave Kyle a shove. You're a bandit, Kyle. Normal people don't go around conning their mates. Kyle backed up with a giant grin and his hands out in front of himself. I tell you what, he said. I'm seriously short of cash. So, even though it goes against my sacred ethical code, I'll do you a deal. What deal? If you let me keep the $5, I'll get Nicole onto the mission. All right, that's worth £5, James smiled. What's this mission about anyway? Drugs, Kyle said. Chapter 6. Brief. Classified. Mission briefing for James Adams, Kyle Blumen, Kerry Chang, and Nicole Edison. Do not remove from room 812. Do not copy or make notes. Children in the drug business. Children are used by drug dealers throughout the world to sell, smuggle, and deliver illegal drugs. There are a number of reasons why children are used. Number 1, kids selling or using drugs are usually viewed as victims rather than criminals. In most countries, children are punished lightly for drug offences, whereas an adult caught with a large quantity of a drug like heroin or cocaine faces 5 to 10 years in prison. 2. Children have access to schools and young people. Drug dealers encourage children to give free samples of drugs to their friends. Someone who starts dealing drugs at 12 or 13 can have hundreds of customers by the time they reach adulthood. 3. Children have few sources of income and plenty of spare time. Many will do a drug dealer a favour, such as making a delivery for just a few pounds, or even for nothing, because they think it makes them look cool. What is cocaine? Cocaine is an illegal drug extracted from the leaves of the coca plant, not to be confused with the coca plant, which is used to make chocolate. Coca grows at high altitude in the mountainous regions of South America. The leaves are refined into a crystalline white powder. Before reaching users, the powder is diluted with cheaper substances, such as lactose or borax, or it is mixed with other drugs, such as methamphetamine, commonly called speed. The powder is snorted up the nose. It can also be injected or mixed with other chemicals to form a smokable version of the drug called crack. Users of cocaine feel a sense of confidence and well-being that lasts 15 to 30 minutes. Cocaine also causes numbness and was once used as an anesthetic by surgeons and dentists. More effective anesthetics are now available. While cocaine doesn't create a physical craving of the kind you get with heroin or cigarettes, many users enjoy the drug's effects so much that they use it to excess and do enormous damage to their bodies. Whereas a heroin or cigarette addict needs a regular fix, cocaine users often go days without using before going on a binge. Serious side effects of cocaine include heart attacks, liver failure, brain seizures, strokes, and damage to the lining of the nose and mouth. Cocaine in Britain. Cocaine was once the champagne of the drug world, a luxury only the rich could afford. A moderate user might get through a gram of powdered cocaine in an evening. In 1984, a gram of cocaine cost £200 to £250. 20 years later, the street price of cocaine has dropped to less than £50 a gram. In some areas of Britain, a gram of low-quality cocaine can cost as little as £25. The United States pays South American governments to hunt and destroy coca plants in the highlands where they grow. Despite this, the street price of cocaine has continued to drop, suggesting that supplies are still plentiful. Most cocaine brought into Britain arrives via the Caribbean. There are thousands of smugglers in British prisons. Tough sentences have done little to stop the trade. Cocaine dealers continue to find people willing to act as drug couriers, often in return for less than £1,000 and an airline ticket. It is impossible to catch every smuggler entering Britain. The police must aim higher and capture the people in control of the drug gangs. Close to 1/3 of the cocaine entering Britain passes through an organisation commonly referred to as KMG. The initials stand for Keith Moore's Gang. Keith Moore and KMG. Biography. 1964. Keith Moore was born on the newly built Thornton estate on the outskirts of Luton in Bedfordshire. 1977. After being caught selling cannabis in his school library, Keith was arrested by police and excluded from school. He became a chronic truant, suspected of many car thefts and burglaries. 1978. Keith began training as a boxer at the J.T. Martin Youth Centre. J.T. Martin was a retired boxer and armed robber who controlled the underworld in Bedfordshire from the early 1960s until 1985. J.T. used his boxing club as a recruiting ground for young criminals. 1980. Keith was spotted in police surveillance photographs of J.T. Martin. In the pictures, Keith is a slightly built 16-year-old who looks out of place amongst J.T.'s crew of boxers and nightclub bouncers. 1981. Keith became J.T. Martin's chauffeur when a previous driver was banned for speeding. Moving around with J.T. gave the 17-year-old an insight into all aspects of the drug business. 1983. After 11 amateur fights, with a record of 1 win, 2 draws and 8 defeats, Keith retired from boxing. Shortly afterwards, he married Julie Robertson, a girl he had known since infant school. 1985. Police captured J.T. Martin and a number of associates selling drugs. J.T. was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Keith Moore had been J.T.'s driver for 4 years, but the rest of J.T.'s crew regarded him as a wimpish hanger-on. 1986. With J.T. in prison, a power struggle erupted amongst his former employees. Keith kept away from the violent struggles and developed an interest in JT's cocaine business. Cocaine was a tiny proportion of the criminal empire, which made most of its money selling heroin and cannabis. JT also owned nightclubs, pubs, and casinos, as well as dozens of small businesses such as laundromats and hairdressing salons. 1987. The price of cocaine kept falling and supply was growing. Keith Moore was one of the first people in Britain to realise that the cocaine business was about to explode. While his colleagues battled over heroin and nightclub profits, Keith travelled to South America and met with members of a powerful Peruvian drug cartel known as Lambayeque. He agreed to buy regular bulk shipments of cocaine at a discounted price. To sell this increased supply of cocaine, Keith launched a telephone delivery service based on similar services that were thriving in the United States. It took advantage of two new technologies, mobile phones and message pages. Instead of having to go searching for a drug dealer, rich clients dialed a number and Keith had someone deliver drugs to their doorstep, usually within an hour. 1988. The cocaine business was earning Keith over £10,000 per week. This cash enabled him, at just 23 years of age, to take effective control of JT Martin's criminal empire. Keith avoided violence whenever possible. He manipulated jealous rivals, setting them against one another. When manipulation failed, he bought rivals off by handing them parts of the business that did not interest him. Keith's next ambition was to build his profitable cocaine business into the biggest in the country. The only part of JT's empire Keith held on to was the youth centre/boxing club in the neighbourhood where he grew up. 1989. Keith's first son, Ringo, was born, now aged 15. 1990. Keith's business grew tenfold in 3 years. Cocaine delivery expanded into Hertfordshire and London. He also began selling wholesale quantities of cocaine to other dealers all over Britain and mainland Europe. 1992. Julie Moore gave birth to twins, April and Keith Jr., now aged 12. 1993. Keith's youngest child, Erin, was born, now aged 11. 1998. Drug dealing is often a short career. Anyone who is successful attracts attention from police and customs. They usually end up behind bars. After investigations failed to gather evidence, police tried to get undercover officers into Keith's inner circle. Dozens of people working for KMG have been prosecuted. Even when they have agreed to cooperate, police have never been able to produce clear evidence linking Keith Moore with his drug business. At the core of KMG, an expensive legal team and fiercely loyal deputies have so far succeeded in keeping Keith Moore out of prison. 2000. As the cocaine business continued to thrive, Keith Moore's personal fortune was estimated at £25 million. After being arrested for non-payment of tax, he pleaded guilty to a minor charge and paid a £50,000 fine. 2001. Julie Moore left Keith after 18 years of marriage. Keith kept custody of the children and the family home. Julie moved into a house across the street and remains on good terms with her ex-husband. 2003. Police launched Operation Snort, the largest task force of drugs officers ever assembled in Britain. The official aim was to stop the cocaine business. Unofficially, everyone knew Operation Snort was gunning for Keith Moore and KMG. The operation descended into chaos when it uncovered corruption within police forces all over the country. 40 officers were found to have taken bribes from KMG. 8 of these were working on Operation Snort, and included the chief superintendent, who was in command of the whole operation. Although Operation Snort is still running, its effectiveness has been blunted by infighting over the bribery allegations. One national newspaper reporting on Operation Snort said if all the corruption allegations are true, it would appear that Keith Moore has more police officers protecting him than the Queen and the Prime Minister combined. 2004, present day. Despite a personal fortune now estimated at between £35 and £50 million, Keith Moore has shunned the trappings of the super rich. He lives with his 4 children in a large, detached house less than 20 minutes' drive from the housing estate where he was born. His 4 children attend the local comprehensive school. He works from an office at home and socialises with family members and friends he has known since childhood. His only extravagances are a collection of Porsche sports cars and a beachfront house in Miami, Florida. Mission request. In early 2004, frustrated by the lack of success in bringing down KMG and outraged by police corruption, the government asked the intelligence service to find a way of infiltrating KMG at the highest level. MI5, the adult branch of British intelligence, could see no reason why it would have any more success at this than the police. CHERUB was suggested as a method of last resort. Keith Moore is close to his 4 children. Appropriately placed CHERUB agents may be able to befriend them and gather vital information. Mission plan. Husband and wife mission controllers Hewitt and Zara Asker will move into a house on the Thornton housing estate with their baby son and 4 CHERUB agents. For the purposes of the mission, the agents will be adopted children of Zara and Hewitt. The family's surname will be Beckett. To minimize confusion, everyone will use their normal first names. Primary objective. Each agent has been selected to befriend one of Keith's children as follows: James Adams, Junior Moore; Kyle Blumen, Ringo Moore; Kerry Chang, Erin Moore; Nicole Edison, April Moore. If the CHERUBs succeed in making friends, they must attempt to socialize out of school and try to get inside Keith's home, gathering information wherever possible. Each CHERUB will be placed in the same tutor group as the child they're supposed to befriend. Secondary objective. Many children on the Thornton estate run errands and deliver drugs for KMG associates. Each CHERUB should identify children who are working for KMG and try to get involved themselves. Children usually work for small-time dealers, delivering drugs to individual clients using mobile phones and push bikes. Evidence suggests that children who attend Keith Moore's boxing club and make reliable couriers are promoted rapidly and given responsibility for moving wholesale quantities of drugs. If these children can be identified and befriended, they may provide information that will enable police to prosecute senior figures inside KMG. Note: on the 13th day of August 2004, this mission plan was passed by the CHERUB Ethics Committee by a 2-to-1 vote on condition that all agents understand the following. This mission has been classified high risk. All agents are reminded of their right to refuse to undertake this mission and to withdraw from it at any time. Agents will be at risk of violence and exposure to illegal drugs. Agents are reminded that they will be excluded from CHERUB immediately if they willingly use cocaine or any other Class A drug. It was breaking all sorts of rules, but Zara Asker let them take the mission briefings outside and read them in the sun. She'd made a picnic, spreading a tablecloth over the grass and covering it with sandwiches and snacks. It was a chance for baby Joshua to get used to Kyle, Kerry, Nicole, and James. The 8-month-old sat under a sunshade, wearing nothing but a nappy. Kerry and Nicole leaned over him with giant grins. "Look at his tiny fingers, James," Kerry beamed. "He's so cute, you could gobble him up." James lay back on the grass with sunglasses on, thinking he looked cool, and wondering how Kyle had managed to get Nicole on the mission. "It's a baby, Kerry," he said. "I've seen one before. They all look exactly the same." Kerry tickled Joshua's belly. "That's James," she said. "Isn't he Mr. Grumpy today?" "Oogie woogie woo," Nicole added. Hewitt was striding across the grass towards them, carrying an icebox and some bottles of soft drinks. He was a big, muscular guy, with bleached hair and half a dozen earrings. He wore a Carhartt t-shirt and old jeans with the legs ripped off. Zara was older than her husband. She looked like a typical harassed mum, with scraggy hair and puked-up milk on her t-shirt. Like most CHERUB staff, she was a former pupil. She'd gone to university and worked for the United Nations before returning to CHERUB as a mission controller. Kyle had worked with Zara a couple of times before. He said she was one of the best mission controllers to get. Everyone agreed Hewitt was the toughest. "Hey Nicole," Kyle said, swatting a fly away from his paper plate. "You should have seen how happy James was when he found out you got on this mission." James sat up, surprised by Kyle's outburst. Nicole turned away from the baby. "Was he?" she said, breaking into a smile. "Is that right, James?" James was flustered. Kerry would kill him if she found out he'd paid Kyle to get Nicole on the mission. "That's right," James spluttered. I never got a chance to know you, but the few times I've spoken to you, you've always seemed nice. Oh, thank you, James, Nicole smiled. I was worried I'd be the odd one out, because you three are already close. Kyle grinned. And James fancies you. Piss off, Kyle, James said. Kyle was one of James's best mates, but he was always trying to con you or wind you up. Sometimes it got annoying. Zara cuffed Kyle around the back of the head. I'm only telling the truth, Kyle said. Kyle, behave, Zara said sharply. And James, you watch your language in front of the baby. James could feel his face burning with a mix of anger and embarrassment. I know James doesn't fancy me, Nicole said. Everyone knows James and Kerry have a thing going. Says who? Kerry gasped. Yeah, James said defensively. Me and Kerry did basic training together and we're good mates. Doesn't mean we fancy each other. Kyle laughed. If you say so, lovebirds. At least I've had a girlfriend, James said, looking at Kyle. You're nearly 15 and I've never seen you anywhere near a girl. Kyle looked offended. I've had girlfriends. James grinned, sensing he'd put Kyle on the back foot. Girls and dreams don't count, dickhead. A second later, James found himself dangling in the air with Hewitt eyeballing him. 50 laps, Hewitt barked. What? James gasped. You shut that filthy mouth in front of my son. He's a baby, James said. He can't understand a word. But he'll learn, Hewitt snarled. Get over to the running track, now. 50 laps of the track took 2 hours and left you for dead when you stiffened up the next morning. Zara intervened before James boiled over and told Hewitt where to shove his laps. Hewitt, darling, Zara said gently. James needs to be here while we discuss the mission. I'm sure an apology will be sufficient. James, still suspended in midair, didn't think anyone deserved an apology, but it was better than running the laps. Okay, James said. I'm sorry. For what? Zara asked. I shouldn't have sworn in front of the baby. Apology accepted, James, Zara said. And Kyle, quit being smart. You're the senior agent on this mission. I expect you to help the less experienced agents, not keep stirring up trouble. After Hewitt had put him down, James straightened his clothes, sat on the grass, and started piling chicken drumsticks and sandwiches onto a paper plate. Nicole shuffled up beside him and pinched a couple of his crisps. Zara began reading notes from a long list. Okay, as you all know, we're leaving first thing the day after tomorrow. Pack light. There are 7 of us, and it's a small house. State schools start Tuesday, giving us nearly a week to settle in before term starts. I've prepared a 160-page dossier on Keith Moore, his associates, and his family. I want all of you to read it and memorize as much as you can.